Where do you even start after everything that came out of Watkins Glen this weekend? Because this honestly feels like one of those NASCAR race weekends where the actual racing almost became secondary to the stories developing underneath the surface in real time. And the crazy part is we have two huge things to break down today that have fans all across the garage arguing and talking nonstop right now. One of them involves a veteran superstar who looked like he was physically and emotionally reaching a real limit during the race itself. And what came over the team radio honestly caught a lot of people completely off guard. And the second story has fans absolutely furious at NASCAR after footage surfaced showing a violent wreck that somehow did not even bring out a caution flag at one of the most technically demanding tracks on the entire Cup Series schedule. Once people saw the onboard angle that the broadcast barely showed, the reaction online completely exploded. And what makes both of these stories feel so connected right now is that they both shine a light on something fans have been talking about with increasing intensity this season. The pressure, the frustration, the emotional exhaustion, and honestly the chaos surrounding NASCAR right now as we push deeper into the 2026 season with playoff spots starting to matter in a very real way. There is tension in the garage. Drivers are losing patience faster than usual. Fans are questioning decisions. And after Watkins Glen, emotions feel like they are boiling over everywhere. So before we get into all of it, if you love real NASCAR conversations like this and want daily coverage from fans who genuinely live this sport every single week, hit that like button and subscribe to Inside NASCAR Report. The channel is still new. We are pushing toward 1,000 subscribers, and it would be awesome to have you here early as part of this community. The first big story out of Watkins Glen has to be Kyle Busch, because even though he finally delivered one of his strongest runs of the entire 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season, the conversation after the race was not really about the finish itself. It was about what fans heard over the team radio and what it said about where Kyle Busch is right now, both physically and mentally, at this stage of a very complicated season. With 38 laps remaining in the go bowling of the Glen, Busch came over the radio and calmly, but urgently asked his Richard Childress racing team to find Dr. Bill Heisel, describing him as the kinder doctor guy and telling them he needed him after the race. And when his team asked whether he wanted the doctor at his car or at the bus, Busch did not hesitate in saying bus and adding that he was going to need a shot. Veteran NASCAR journalist Dustin Long reported the radio message on social media immediately, sharing background that Dr. William Heisel has extensive experience working with NASCAR teams, drivers, and pit crew members throughout his career in motorsports medicine. At first, nobody really knew what was going on. And because this is Kyle Busch, a driver with a well-documented history of pushing through serious physical adversity, going all the way back to his compound leg fractures at Daytona in 2015, fans immediately started wondering if something bigger was happening. Fox Sports broadcaster Mike Joy clarified during the FS1 broadcast that Busch had been battling a sinus cold throughout the entire week leading into Watkins Glen, and that the post-race medical request was related to that ongoing illness, rather than any crash injury or in-car emergency. Social media had briefly lit up with hashtags expressing concern before the sinus cold explanation spread and eased the most serious worries, with Busch walking unaided to his hauler after the race ended. And honestly, when you think about how physically demanding the Watkins Glen road course actually is, with sustained heavy braking zones, intense cornering forces, and brutal cockpit heat across 100 laps, the context of battling a sinus illness throughout that entire race weekend makes what Busch delivered on Sunday feel even more impressive. Busch started the go bowling at the Glen from 21st position and finished stage 1 outside the top 20, looking like he might just be grinding through another difficult afternoon in what has already been an incredibly frustrating 2026 campaign. But then things started changing in stage 2. The number 8 RCR team made adjustments to the car between stages. Busch started finding speed, and he climbed to a 5th-place stage 2 finish that picked up desperately needed points for a team that has been star to them all season. In the final stage, fuel-saving strategy and smart race management helped him stay inside the top 10, while other drivers around him faded on older tires. By the checkered flag, Busch brought the number 8 Zone Jalapeno Lime Chevrolet home in 8th place, which was his best finish of the entire 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season, and his best result since finishing inside the top 5 at the Phoenix season finale the previous year. Post-race, Busch said it was a strong day for the number 8 team, and that they were a top 10 car for the majority of the race, adding that they made the adjustments and strategy calls needed to drive forward and make up track position after qualifying 21st despite battling a car that trended tight throughout the event. He acknowledged they ran out of fuel at the end of the race, but said they were still going home with their second top 10 finish of the season. Hearing all of that while knowing he was fighting through a sinus illness that required a post-race injection makes the effort feel genuinely remarkable. But here is where this story becomes much bigger than just a driver being sick during a race weekend and fighting through it. Through 12 races of the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season heading into Watkins Glen, Busch sat 24th in the championship standings after leading only 19 total laps all season and posting 7 finishes of 20th or worse. That difficult stretch was enough for RCR to make a crew chief change after the Talladega race, replacing first-year crew chief Jim Pullman with Andy Street atop the number 8 pit box. And Busch has shown genuine flashes of speed in the 3 races since that adjustment was made. Inside the NASCAR garage, the growing belief is that the emotional tension between Kyle Busch and Richard Childress Racing is building toward a pressure point that both sides are working to manage. Busch has failed to make the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs in each of his 2 previous seasons with RCR, and he is currently in a contract year with the organization with no public update on extension discussions. During his prime years at Joe Gibbs Racing, Kyle Busch's emotional radio moments usually ended with wins and championship runs. The frustration was there, but the trophies balanced everything out. Now the frustration keeps building race after race, and Kevin Harvick has recently suggested that the number 8 car at Richard Childress Racing may realistically be Busch's only viable Cup Series seat moving forward, which only adds more weight to an already pressure-filled situation because it means this partnership almost has to work for both sides to get what they need from it. That is why Watkins Glen felt so emotionally complicated to watch. On one side, you saw genuine flashes of the old Kyle Busch. Smart road course management, gritty physical toughness racing through illness, climbing from 21st to finish 8th. His teammates and fellow competitors praised his toughness after the race, with one driver saying Rowdy is as tough as they come, and that racing up front while dealing with that and still finishing strong says a lot about who he is. But on the other side, you also saw a veteran driver who sounds exhausted on the radio, carrying the weight of a full season of frustration, fighting to stop the spiral before this 2026 season completely slips away from him in a contract year. And speaking of NASCAR fans being furious after Watkins Glen, the second story from this weekend has completely exploded online because people simply cannot believe NASCAR never threw a caution flag for Cody Ware's massive crash late in the Go Bowling at the Glen. With 9 laps remaining in Sunday's race, Ware was running just behind Ricky Stenhouse Jr. exiting turn 6 when he lost control and spun hard into the outside wall, taking a violent head-on hit that sent his number 51 Rick Ware Racing Chevrolet spinning violently back toward the racing surface. And the scary part was not just the first impact. The hit was so hard that photos taken by fans at Watkins Glen International show the Armco barrier behind the tire pack was visibly bent inward and damaged from the force of the collision, with motorsports writer Austin Kaninsky among many who posted the photo, saying it was pretty crazy to see how much the wall gave under the impact. But somehow NASCAR never threw a caution flag. The FS1 broadcast barely showed the crash at all during the live television coverage, with the Fox Sports booth only briefly capturing Ware's damaged car off to the side for a split second before moving on with no replay and no proper explanation of what had just happened. And once the onboard in-car footage surfaced on social media shortly after the race, fan reactions completely exploded. People were posting in real time, saying Cody Ware wrecked like hell, and it did not bring out yellow, with the footage making the rounds rapidly, as fans who had only seen the brief broadcast glimpse got their first real look at just how violent the impact actually was. Denny Hamlin also called out NASCAR publicly on social media, saying the caution absolutely should have been thrown regardless of whether the car was eventually able to limp away from the scene. The number 51 car sat parked in the middle of the track for several seconds following the impact before Ware was able to get it rolling again, and the car was clearly too damaged to continue properly, eventually being taken to the garage and finishing 37th after 90 laps. Now here is the part that completely changes how you understand the entire situation. On the Hauler Talk podcast, NASCAR Vice President of Racing Communications Mike Ford explained exactly what happened from race control's perspective, saying that race director Tim Berman clicked over turn 6, just as Ware's car was rolling off the scene, and the turn 6 spotter radio that the track was clear and there was no debris, which is why no caution was thrown. Ford also acknowledged something that made the entire situation even more significant. He stated clearly that there should have been a caution, and that the incident immediately led to internal discussions at NASCAR about how to improve response times for crashes where the severity of the impact is not immediately obvious from visual monitoring alone. And regarding the damage barrier, Ford explained that the Armco barrier is designed to give on impact because the posts are sledgehammered into the ground without cement, functioning almost like a safer barrier, and that the visible bowing of the wall was actually the safety design working as intended rather than a structural failure. The biggest news to come out of all of this is what NASCAR announced in the aftermath. NASCAR is now actively developing a faster crash data review system specifically designed to help race control identify the severity of incidents more quickly when a car leaves the scene before officials can fully assess the impact, directly as a result of what happened with Cody, where at Watkins Glen. That is a genuinely significant institutional response to what could have easily been dismissed as just another green flag call at a road course. Instead, NASCAR is treating the Ware incident as a legitimate process failure that requires a systemic fix before a similar situation produces a much worse outcome at a future race. To be fair to NASCAR's original decision in the moment, the sanctioning body rarely throws caution flags for single-car incidents at road courses like Watkins Glen, where the field is more spread out and a single-car spin carries less immediate risk of triggering a multi-car incident than it would on an oval. And the fact that Ware was able to get the car moving and eventually limp it back to pit road, even temporarily, gave race control visual evidence that the situation was not an immediate emergency from their vantage point. Shane Van Gisbergen used those green flag laps to hunt down leaders Ty Gibbs and Connor Zilisch, and ultimately won the race by 7 seconds, meaning the decision to stay green had a direct and meaningful impact on who actually took the checkered flag at Watkins Glen. Had that caution come out, there would have been another pit cycle, another restart, and a completely different race outcome. Van Gisbergen secured his 7th career Cup Series victory and became Trackhouse Racing's all-time winningest driver with the Watkins Glen result, moving himself above the chase cut line in the process. After the race, he called it unbelievable to win with the number 97 car, praised crew chief Stephen Doran for the strategy calls that put him in position to run down the leaders late, and acknowledged they had not been particularly strong in practice before qualifying well, and then executing perfectly during the race. Watching Van Gisbergen on road courses right now genuinely feels like watching a specialist from another motorsports world completely demolishing some of the best oval racers on the planet in their own backyard. The gap between him and the field at technical road circuits like Watkins Glen is becoming one of the most fascinating storylines on the entire 2026 Cup Series calendar. But overall, this entire Watkins Glen weekend just felt emotionally intense from every angle simultaneously. You had Kyle Busch battling a sinus illness while racing through enormous pressure surrounding his future at Richard Childress Racing and somehow delivering his best finish of the season. You had fans and drivers questioning NASCAR officiating after Cody, where his violent crash stayed green, and NASCAR has now acknowledged it should not have. You had Fox Sports taking serious criticism online for barely showing the crash during the live broadcast and providing essentially no meaningful coverage of one of the most significant safety moments of the race. And you could feel throughout the entire weekend how tense this 2026 season is becoming as the summer stretch approaches and the pressure inside that garage keeps building with every passing race. Because at this point in the season, every single race feels bigger than the one before it. Every mistake becomes a headline. Every emotional radio message becomes a debate. Every caution decision gets analyzed online for days. And honestly, that is a significant part of what makes NASCAR so genuinely compelling to follow right now. The emotions are real. The stakes are real. And after Watkins Glen, it feels like every driver, every team, and every official inside this sport is operating at full intensity with no margin for error remaining. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Kyle Busch and Richard Childress Racing can still turn this season around before the chase cutoff arrives? Was NASCAR wrong to keep the race green after Cody Ware's crash? And are fans justified in being angry at Fox Sports for barely showing the incident live? Drop your thoughts in the comments because NASCAR fans are going to have very strong opinions about all of it. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like and subscribe to Inside NASCAR Report. We are still a growing channel pushing toward 1,000 subscribers. And if you enjoy honest daily NASCAR conversations from real fans who live this sport every single week, we would love to have you here with us.